Do you remember back in, the early days of Facebook? We're talking what, maybe 2013, when it first hit a billion users?
Oh yeah, everyone was obsessively filling out every single profile field.
Exactly. Your work history, your favorite movies. But there was one field that always seemed to cause the most stress.
The relationship status.
The relationship status. You could be single, you could be married, but there was that one other option that just, I don't know, it captured the moment perfectly.
Complicated.
It's complicated, and, it became this huge cultural joke.
It really did.
But the more I was reading the material for today, the more I think that phrase is actually the perfect description for, well, everything now.
It's not just relationships anymore.
No, the economy, our politics, and especially the places we work, it's all complicated. And that's really our jumping off point for today's deep dive.
Right. We are digging into organizational communication, Approaches and Processes by Catherine Miller. And before you tune out.
Thinking this is about writing a better memo.
Exactly. Thinking this is a guide to Slack etiquette. Let me just stop you right there.
Yeah, that's not the mission here at all. Reading Miller's work, this feels much bigger. I don't know, it's almost about shifting how we even think about what an organization is.
That is the core tension. We tend to think of a company, an institution, as a thing.
A static object,
It's
like a building.
A machine, yeah. You go to work. You work for a corporation. But Miller says we need to stop seeing it as a noun and start seeing it as a verb. It's not an organization. It's the process of organizing.
Which sounds like a tiny little grammatical change, but as we're about to see, it changes absolutely everything.
So to get there, we're going to look at what Miller calls the megatrends that are making our world so messy.
Then we'll talk about a survival concept called requisite variety, which sounds intimidating, but is actually a lifesaver.
And finally, we'll break down the 4 flows of communication that, according to this theory, actually create and sustain an organization. It's a great road.
I love that, and it really starts with that messiness. Miller sets the stage by comparing 2 different eras. She says we've moved from the age of Ford to the
age of Starbucks.
I thought this analogy was perfect. The age of Ford, Henry Ford, the Model T, and the famous line was,
You can have any color car you want so long as it's black.
Right. Standardization, predictability. An organization back then wanted to be a machine. Every part was identical because efficiency was king.
And individuality was just inefficient.
But then you fast forward to today. You walk into a Starbucks, you don't just order coffee.
No, you've got thousands of choices. Soy milk, oat milk, half calf, extra foam, no foam.
It's this era of infinite customization.
Yeah.
And that complexity isn't just in our coffee, it's in the entire environment that businesses have to navigate now. Miller points to 4 megatrends driving this. The first one is the big one, globalization.
It's a word we hear all the time, right? Usually in the context of trade deals or politics.
Yeah, but what does it actually mean for a company day to day?
Well, it's about this deep, tangled interconnectedness. Miller uses this one quote that just nails it. Welcome to the new global economy. One guy sneezes and someone else gets a cold.
Wow. Yeah. That feels incredibly accurate, especially after the last few years.
It is. A mortgage crisis in the U.S. in 2008 almost instantly destabilizes economies in Europe and Asia. So for an organization, you're never in a vacuum. You're dealing with outsourcing, multinational teams.
And this constant fight between what Miller calls convergence and divergence.
Break that down for us.
Okay, so convergence is the pressure to make everyone do things the same way. For efficiency, think of a big tech company wanting its engineers in Tokyo and Berlin to use the exact same code.
They want a unified global culture.
Right, but divergence is the reality that, well, people are different, cultures are different. If you ignore that, you're going to alienate your customers or your employees.
So organizations are caught in this permanent tug of war. You have to be consistent globally, but also specific locally. It's a huge communication challenge.
Okay, so that's the first layer of chaos. The second trend she points to is a bit darker, but you can't ignore it. Terrorism.
Specifically, how the world pivoted after 9/11. It just fundamentally changed the security landscape.
And Miller makes a really sharp point here. Terrorism isn't an ideology, it's a strategy. It uses unpredictable violence to create fear.
And organizationally, the response wasn't just hire more security guards. It created this entirely new, massive sector.
The Department of Homeland Security in the U.S., for instance.
A colossal organizational challenge. But what's really interesting is how Miller frames it. She says Homeland Security, at its core, is a communication problem.
This was the whole connect the dots issue, right?
Precisely. The failures, post 9/11 were so often failures of information sharing. You had local police, the FBI, the CIA, first responders, all holding different pieces of the puzzle.
But the organizational walls between them, the silos, prevented that information from flowing.
So the challenge becomes, how do you design a system where separate, independent agencies can actually talk to each other in a crisis? That flow of information is literally a matter of life and death.
Okay, on to the third megatrend. This one is maybe the biggest of all: climate change.
Right. And organizations are right in the middle of this. On the one hand, you have the legacy of the Industrial Revolution factories, energy transport. Organizations are historically the cause of the problem.
But they also have to be the solution.
Exactly. You can't solve climate change without corporations fundamentally changing how they operate. So now you have green companies, debates over energy policy.
And this huge communication challenge, how do you tell your story? I feel like every company has a sustainability report now, but the public is so skeptical.
And that skepticism creates a new layer of scrutiny. People call it greenwashing. Companies are operating in a glass house now. You can't hide your smokestacks anymore.
Which leads to the fourth trend, which is a bit more personal: change in demographics. Who is actually in the workforce?
The workforce is just shifting dramatically. We have an aging population, people are working longer, and that's created what sociologists call the sandwich generation.
I feel like I know so many people in this exact situation. They're caring for their own kids, but they're also caring for their aging parents at the same time.
That's it. And think about what that means for an organization. A rigid 9-to-5 structure just doesn't work for them.
Right.
You need flexibility, different support systems.
Not to mention you've got more multicultural diversity than ever. 4 generations on one team, maybe from 5 different cultural backgrounds.
Right back to that divergence point. The potential for miscommunication is just enormous.
So let's just take a breath and recap this chaos. We have globalization tangling our economies, terrorism creating new security challenges, climate change rewriting industrial rules, and changing demographics altering the workforce itself. That is a lot.
It is completely overwhelming.
It seems like the old, rigid, Ford-style way of running a company, it just wouldn't survive for 5 minutes in this world.
It wouldn't. And that brings us to the survival concept we mentioned earlier. This is from a scholar named Carl Weick. It's called requisite variety.
I love this concept because the name sounds so, I don't know, dense and academic.
It does.
But the idea itself is actually really simple and intuitive once you get it.
The definition is this: the internal workings of a system must be as diverse and complicated as the environment it is trying to manage.
Or, to put it even more simply, the organization has to be as complicated as the problem.
Exactly. Let's use Miller's catering analogy to ground this. Imagine a small local catering company.
Okay. They do weddings in one town. Their environment is pretty simple.
Right. They know the venues, the suppliers, the customers. So their internal structure can be simple. Maybe it's just the owner, a cook, and a couple of servers. Communication is face-to-face.
But now imagine that little company tries to become a global restaurant chain.
Now the environment is massively complex. You're dealing with international supply chains, different labor laws, currency exchange rates.
If that global chain tried to operate with the same simple structure as the local caterer, the owner just shouting orders, what happens?
It collapses instantly. It needs a complex internal structure departments for legal, HR, logistics, marketing, just to survive. It needs variety inside to match the variety outside.
So the big takeaway here is you can't simplify your way out of a complex world.
Exactly, and that's so counterintuitive. Business gurus are always yelling, keep it simple. But Weick says no. If the environment is messy, your organization and your communication have to be nuanced enough to match it.
This idea that communication itself needs to get more complex leads us to the biggest pivot in the book. We have to fundamentally rethink what communication even is.
Right. I think most of us have what we call the transmission model in our heads.
The pipeline view. I have a message, I send it to you, you get it, done.
The classic SMCR model. Source, message, channel, receiver. I have a thought, I put it into an email, I send it, you receive it.
It seems logical enough. Why is that a problem?
It's not that it's wrong, it's just incredibly limited. It works for telling you the meeting's at 2 p.m. But Miller says this model leads to a container metaphor.
A container metaphor.
Yeah, we start to see the organization as a container, like a box or a building, and communication is just the stuff that happens inside of it.
So the organization exists first, the walls, the desks, and then we start talking.
Right. But that misses the most important question. How did the organization get there in the first place? It didn't just appear. And this brings us to the constitutive model.
Constitutive, as in to constitute, to create something.
Yes. The core idea here is revolutionary. Communication isn't just about moving information. Communication is a process that produces and reproduces shared meaning.
It creates the organization.
It creates it. This was the aha moment for me. Without communication, a company is just a pile of bricks with some people standing around. The company doesn't exist until we start talking it into existence.
They call the CCO, right? The communicative constitution of organization.
That's the one. When we talk, we are literally building the social reality of our workplace. Now, we don't have to throw out the transmission model completely.
Sometimes you just need to send a fire alarm signal.
Exactly. But we need a bigger model, a meta model, to understand that communication is doing something much more powerful than just moving data.
And this connects right back to Carl Weick hating the noun organization.
He does. He insists on the verb organising. He says an organization isn't a static thing. It's a dynamic process. It's constantly being made and remade through our interactions.
That's a little mind-bending. It means bureaucracy isn't a physical thing. It's just a series of interactions, filling out forms, standing in line, making phone calls. If we all stopped.
The bureaucracy would vanish. It feels real because we keep performing it. The Montreal School breaks this down really well. They talk about co-orientation. Two people have a conversation. Eventually, that conversation gets written down. It becomes a text.
And that's how a hallway chat can become a company policy.
There's this fantastic case study in the book about a group called City Partners. It's the perfect example. They were struggling to explain who they were.
Oh, right, the dashboard metaphor.
Yes. The director, just in a meeting, casually said their work was kind of like keeping an eye on the dashboard of a car. It was a throwaway line.
It caught on.
It caught on in a huge way. People started saying, we need to move the needle, or is the tank full? That simple metaphor became what's called an authoritative text. It stopped being a comment and started shaping their entire identity. It became their reality.
Wow, that is the constitutive power of communication in a nutshell. One metaphor can build an entire culture.
So if communication builds the organization, how does that actually happen? I mean, I can't just walk into a room and shout, we sell shoes now, and suddenly we're Nike.
No, you can't. It needs structure. And this is where the four flows model comes in. It's from McPhee and Zog. They say for an organization to exist, 4 types of communication have to be flowing all the time.
Okay, let's walk through them. Flow number 1 is
membership negotiation.
This is all about who is in and who is out. Job interviews, recruitment, socialization when you first join.
But it's also firing someone, right? Or an alumni network. It's constantly defining the boundaries of who belongs.
If you stop doing that, you don't have an organization. You just have a crowd.
Okay, that makes sense. Flow number 2, self-structuring. This sounds like the boring part.
It can be, but it's essential. This is the design of the organization. Org charts, policy manuals, the company charter. This is communication that steers the ship.
And what's key is that this type of communication lasts over time. You don't have to redecide who the boss is every single morning. The chart does that for you.
It stabilizes the chaos. But the chart can't handle everything. Which brings us to flow number 3.
Activity coordination.
This is getting the actual work done. A surgeon talking to a nurse in the OR. An airline agent trying to rebook a flight for a customer.
Right, because the policy manual, the self-structuring, might just say the flight is canceled. But that doesn't help the person standing right in front of you.
Exactly. Activity coordination is the messy, real-time communication you need to solve a specific problem. It's improvisation.
I like that. And finally, flow number 4, institutional positioning.
This is all about facing outward, talking to the rest of the world. It includes marketing, PR, dealing with regulators, negotiating with suppliers.
It's how the organization explains itself and proves its legitimacy. If you don't do this, nobody knows you exist and you get no resources.
And Miller uses a great grand example to show this applies to everyone, even the Catholic Church.
The Vatican.
Even an organization that's thousands of years old runs on these 4 flows. They negotiate membership through baptism and ordaining priests.
They have immense self-structuring with canon law and the hierarchy of the church.
They have activity coordination in running a local parish or a charity.
And they absolutely have institutional positioning through global diplomacy and making statements on ethics. It really does connect all the dots.
So whether you're a startup or the Vatican, you're essentially just a bundle of these 4 communication flows, if any one of them stops.
The whole thing dissolves.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's bring this all home. We started with the world being complicated.
Driven by globalization, terrorism, climate change, and demographics.
And to survive that, we need requisite variety. We need our organizations to be as complex as the world they're in.
Which means we have to ditch the old transmission view, the idea of an organization as a simple container for messages.
And instead, we embrace this constitutive view. We recognize that our conversations, our metaphors, our policies, these four flows, are actively building the organization every single day.
And that's an empowering thought for you listening right now. Because if organizations are made of communication, then you are a builder. Every time you speak, you're constructing the place you work.
That is a powerful idea. But before we sign off, Miller leaves us with one last little twist. We've spent this whole time talking about how words create worlds. But what about the physical stuff?
The materiality. This is
Yeah.
where the field is heading now. We got so excited about communication creating reality that we kind of forgot about the buildings, the computers, the actual bodies of the workers.
Right. You can socially construct a new policy, but if the server farm melts down or the office is physically designed to keep people apart, that material reality matters.
It absolutely does. Scholars are now asking, how does the physical world interact with our words? How do the bricks and mortar constrain or enable these communication flows? It's not just words, it's words and walls.
Something to think about the next time you walk into your office or, log into your virtual one.
Exactly. Look around and ask how that physical space is shaping the communication that happens within it. And try to spot the four flows in your next meeting.
It might just change how you see your entire workday. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us.
Always a pleasure.
We'll see you next time.